having covered status quo and burden of proof, I want to start talking about some ideas for how you can develop your persuasive arguments, how you can start thinking through your burden of proof, coming up with a good response to that burden of proof. So if we're talking about altering the status quo, we can identify some common argumentative elements. And these common argumentative elements are often referred to as the stock issues. Stock here simply means common. Like, you know, in movies we say there's certain stock footage, scenes that appear again and again in movies. We would say stock issues. These are issues that pop up again and again in a number of different argumentative encounters. So I want you to think about these stock issues as a lens for looking at your case and inventing arguments. So what are they? Stock issues are can be defined various ways, but I like this way. I think this is perhaps one of the more useful ones. Ill, blame, cure, and consequence. Okay, there's a medical metaphor here, right? Ill, blame, cure, and consequence. And how I'm identifying each one of these affects the overall nature of the argument. For example, let's say there's something wrong. Ill, I have a headache. Oh, I've got a headache. That's an ill. So if I'm going to remedy that headache, I got to figure out blame. What's causing that headache? Oh, I've got a headache. Oh, it's because I didn't drink enough water. I'm dehydrated. Cure? Well, that's a pretty easy one. Give me a tap. I'm thirsty. So then I drink the water. Consequences? What's going to happen as a result of that cure? I will probably have to go to the bathroom a little bit more, but acceptable because my headache's gone. All right. Same thing. Ill. Oh, I have a headache. Blame. I was wasted last night. I drank way too much. Cure. I should probably have an aspirin. Consequence. I will rethink my future policy for this evening's plans and how much I am to consume. So that's another way. Or you could say, ill, I have a headache. Blame. I'm dehydrated. Cure. I will saw my own head off. That has eliminated the ill. Consequences. I will be dead. That's not a consequence I'm willing to bear for the cost of that headache. Okay? So ill, blame, cure, and consequence all work together. And if you change one element, it changes the chemistry of the other ones. So I want to move through each one of these bit by bit. So let's start with ill. When we're talking about ill, we're talking about what's the root problem here. What's wrong? If you're arguing for a change to the status quo, there had better be a reason for a change. Ill allows us to think very formally about what that reason is. And we can break it into smaller components. We can think about significance and harms. How big is the problem? How bad is the problem? Quantitatively, looking at ill quantitatively or qualitatively. And so you want to make sure that if you're making the case in that specific issue, you're able to talk about both significance and harms. And this doesn't matter what topic you're on, okay? So if you're talking about the increase of childhood obesity in the United States, yeah, you can talk about significance, give me raw figures, statistics about the increase in childhood obesity, and give me harms. What's it doing to us as a nation? What's it doing to those individual children? Okay, that makes sense. You're proving ill in that case. Now, let's say it was, I think people should be going to farmers markets more. I think people should be going to the Ballard Farmers Market more. That's my neighborhood in Seattle. Okay, that's a much smaller issue than all of childhood obesity, but I can still think through it in terms of significance and harms. Significance, well, there's been a flattening out of attendance at the Ballard Farmers Market. I don't know if this is the case. It seems to be still quite active, but I can talk about it in terms of raw numbers and harms. Well, what's it doing? Well, we're losing a lot of support for local growers. So that's a much smaller issue, but I can still run through it in terms of significance and harms. If I'm going to say we need to change something, I got to prove ill. I got to prove that there's a reason that we need to make a change. Now, you want to make sure you've got both significance and harms if you're going to prove ill. So you could say, all right, here in, globally, this day and age, there are an estimated 50 million people that suffer from the debilitating pain and anguish of hangnails. Okay, significant, yes. Harmful, not so much. You wasted my time with the buildup for hangnails. Get a pair of clippers. What the heck is wrong with you? So you want to have both. You could have the flip side. globally. In this day and age, can you believe it? It's sad but true. There are up to 10 people annually killed by exploding milk cartons. Globally, 10? I'll take my chances. I got a better chance of that happening than, I can win the lottery more than likely than that out of all the people around. So that's harmful for those 10. I don't want to be one of the 10, gets killed by an exploding milk carton. I don't think that happens. That's a hypothetical. But, I want to make sure I can prove both significance and harms for my issue if I'm going to demonstrate ill. So we've got ill, but that's not enough. We want to think about blame. Okay? We've got this problem, but then thinking in terms of what's preventing the status quo from solving that ill. If the ill is as bad as I just said it was, okay, if this is a legitimate problem, why has no one else fixed it yet? Okay? We can think through blame in terms of inherency. What's preventing the solution from taking place? Well, we could say structural inherency. There's a formal block. There's something in the structure that has prevented us from solving this problem. Typically, we would talk about this as laws, right? So when people were arguing for same-sex marriage here in the state of Washington, right, they were saying, look, right now we've got two different categories of marriage. We can't get married because of a law. So it was totally a structural inherency that was preventing same-sex marriage. So structural inherency is one potential. The other one might be attitudinal inherency, an informal block. Maybe a preconception or a misunderstanding or lack of knowledge. Oh, no one's going to the farmer's market. Why not? They don't know about it? Oh, well, that's the problem then, it seems. That's an attitudinal inherency. They're just unaware of it. Structural inherency, attitudinal inherency, or we can talk about a gap inherency. So lots of times there's already solutions in place, but they're not doing enough to solve the ill. Okay, so we've already got a law or a practice in place, but it's insufficient. So once again, let's go back to that farmer's market analogy. Let's say, oh, we don't have enough attendance at farmer's market. There is an advertisement campaign in place, but it's not a very good one. And so it's not really raising enough awareness about the Sunday farmers market. So we need to come up with a better one. So that would be, there's a solution in place, but there's a gap between the solution, between what's the current policy in place and what needs to be in place. So that's ill and blame. So we're halfway through those stock issues. So I'm going to go ahead and end here, and in the next lecture, we'll talk about cure and consequence.